Hello and welcome to this lecture. Today we are going to discuss indirect thrombin inhibitors, and among the indirect thrombin inhibitors we have heparin is the example, and we classify heparin according to the molecular weight because they are long chain of you can say that a long chain of glucuronic sulfates that are joined together to form a long molecular weight structures. So we classify them into three categories. Number one is unfractionated heparin, and then we have high molecular weight heparin, and then we have low molecular weight heparin. And when we talk about molecular weight of the heparin, we talk about obviously the composition of the heparin. And in the next slide, when we discuss the composition of the heparin, the main thing is it is a heterogeneous mixture of sulfated mucopolysaccharide. So what is the meaning of sulfated mucopolysaccharide? If we split this word into two sections, especially the mucopolysaccharide, it have been formed by two words. One is muco and the second part is polysaccharide. So first of all, we must know that it is a polysaccharide that is formed by a number of monosaccharide units. Then the prefix, which is muco, is explaining about the mucus secretion. So the source of the heparin is from the mucus secretion, so that is why we call them that as mucopolysaccharide. And then if you see the word sulfated, we need to see the structure of the heparin and then we can explain in detail. So for example, this is a picture of heparin. If we see it is consist of glucuronate, and the glucuronate is actually the source of glucuronate is glucuronic acid, which is present in the urine as well. So the glucuronate is actually formed with the presence of sulfate molecule, and if you see on the pink structure, let me draw and then explain to you. If we take a look of this unit and this unit, this all pink structure, they are showing you the presence of sulfate, and which is formed by the salt of sulfuric acid H2SO4. So when the H2SO4 dissociate, we can get SO3 minus 1. So the glucuronate is the molecule that is formed with sulfate after the formation of the salt, and it bind at two positions. If you see, this is one carbon, this is second carbon, so they are expressed in the position of the carbon. And I know that you are not familiar with the chemistry, but I just explain in general because this is necessary to understand heparin. So the glucuronate molecule bind at two carbon position with the sulfate molecule, which is usually present in the form of sulfuric acid, and if it dissociate and then bind with the carbon, it give you SO3 minus 1. So these together make up the molecule D-glucuronate 2-sulfate, which actually bind with another subunit of N-sulfoglucosamine 6-sulfate. So if you see this one, we have two sulfate molecule. One is, you can say, N-sulfo. This is, we call them as N position, and then we mention them as sulfo. Then if you see, then the other section is glucosa. Then we have the third unit, which is amine 6-sulfate. This NH that is binding with the sulfate molecule at 6 carbon position. This is, you can see that the position of the carbon 6, 5, this is expressed as 4, this is expressed as 3. So the position of the carbon is very important. So when we express the position of the carbon, it is at 6 position, so we call them glucosamine 6-sulfate because of the present at 6 position. So the main thing is that they are formed by the combination of monosaccharides which are formed with D-glucuronate 2-sulfate and N-sulfoglucosamine 6-sulfate. So D-glucuronate 2-sulfate, this whole unit is expressed as glucuronate, which is formed by the glucuronic acid, which is the source is actually glucuronic acid, and then this bind with at 2 position with sulfate to give D-glucuronate, and then they bind together with the oxygen present at the center with another unit of N-sulfoglucosamine 6 sulfate unit, and then we mention them as N. So what is meant by N? It means the number of units. So this same pair can be maybe more than 5, 6, 10, 20. So if the molecular weight, we call them heparin as low molecular weight, it means that we have low units, a less number of units that are joined together to form a heparin. And when we talk about the molecular weight, we express in terms of the elements that are present inside, like oxygen, hydrogen, carbon. They all have some the atomic weight, and when they join together, they form the molecular weight, as you have discussed in your schools and about the chemistry. So if N is low, N is less numbers, then we have low molecular weight heparin. If number of N is more, because it is formed by a number of subunits, then it becomes high molecular weight heparin. And when we talk about the classification, unfractionated heparin, heparin can be present in the form of purified form. We purify the heparin. How? Because heparin is present in the mucus. So we can extract the heparin from the animals. So if the heparin that is extracted is not present in the purified form, then it is known as unfractionated. And when we talk about fractionated heparin, then it is present in more purified form. And when we discuss about high molecular weight or low molecular weight, it depends upon N value, number of units that are joined together. So it could be 5, 10, 20 and so on. Because if you read in the textbook, it is present in a number of formats. If it's number of monomers that are joined together to form the polysaccharide. So the main thing is again that it is a heterogeneous mixture. Why we call them heterogeneous mixture? Because obviously the mixture consists of glucosamines, glucuronates, then sulfate. So it is not a homogeneous, it is a heterogeneous mixture, consists of a number of you can say that molecules that are joined together. Then it is a mixture of obviously heterogeneous mixture with sulfated mucopolysaccharides. I already discussed that muco is come from the word mucus. So what is the function? It is used for preventing thrombosis growth, allowing them body own thrombolytic system to dissolve the clot. So somebody have, if myocardial infarction or thrombus formation, then it is thrombolytic in nature. Why? If you see the word thrombo is the thrombus, and lytic, I already mentioned several times, wherever the term comes lytic, it means to dissolve, to dissociate. So the thrombo means thrombus and lytic mean to dissociate. So when the thrombus dissociate, when we need to dissociate the thrombus, we use heparin. Commercially, I already mentioned it is present in it can be extracted from the animal. So it can be extracted from porcine intestinal mucosa, or bovine lung is another source of extracting the heparin. It is also come as unfractionated, and it also present is eliminated by the lungs or RES, like macrophages of the liver and kidney. And when we see that unfractionated heparin, it is eliminated either through lungs or RES, which is stand for reticuloendothelial cells. And reticuloendothelial cells are, for example, the liver cells or the Kupffer cells, and they eliminate unfractionated heparin. But the mechanism of action is still known, or either through kidney. So we need to monitor the patient kidney as well when we giving this drug. I found one interesting article regarding this matter, and let me share with you. Let me share this article. The title is "The Heparin All Nephrologists Should Know." And when I take a look at this article, they are having very interesting information about comparison between unfractionated heparin and low molecular weight heparin. So first of all, we need to know that unfractionated heparin, and when we compare with high molecular weight heparin, both are same. So we are actually comparing high molecular weight heparin with low molecular weight heparin. So that's the comparison. Or we also comparing unfractionated heparin with low molecular weight heparin. So first of all, we need to know that unfractionated heparin and high molecular weight heparin is same. So we are comparing between high molecular weight heparin and low molecular weight heparin, or we can compare unfractionated heparin and low molecular weight heparin. So when we take a look of this this article, they are talking about that unfractionated heparin actually they are polyionic branch of glucosamine glycan, and they are talking about molecular weight between 6,000 to 30,000. And when we take a look of the comparison between them, the main difference that they are talking about that when we give 30% of unfractionated heparin, it binds with 80, which is antithrombin, and with high affinity, and that thus leading to conformational changes which change or convert antithrombin slow rapidly 1,000 times acting inhibitors of thrombin. Apart from thrombin, antithrombin interact with coagulation factor 10A and other components of plasmic hemostasis such as factor 9, 11 and factor 7A, and they mentioned plasmin and kallikrein and trypsin. And if you take a look of this picture, they are also presenting the difference between unfractionated heparin and low molecular weight heparin. And if you see on the top right side, they are talking about pentasaccharide. The molecule is pentasaccharide. Penta means 5 units. If you see the bold round structure, they are expressing in the form of the round as pentasaccharide. And then you see that with they bind with the antithrombin along with factor 10A, and then you can see that the molecule bind with antithrombin along with factor 10A. So they form a unit with factor 5A, factor 10A and thrombin. Whereas when we compare with low molecular weight heparin, their formation is without thrombin. They are just binding with factor 10A. And then they are also explaining different type of heparin, like you can see that unfractionated heparin, the molecular weight is around 6,000 to 30,000. So it is quite high molecular weight heparin. That is why the name unfractionated heparin and high molecular weight heparin is same. Whereas the other that having low molecular weight is enoxaparin, nadroparin, and then there are the list of the other drugs that are having low molecular weight, and they mention different type of heparin, and usually we give low molecular weight heparin. So that's a good article, and they are talking about different kind of heparin, how they eliminate it, and then the important thing is that the clinical use of heparin in patient with renal failure, that is the most important thing. And they are talking about that we need to monitor if we given unfractionated or low molecular weight, we need to monitor the patient kidney. And the comparison between low molecular weight and fractionated, especially in the treatment of venous thromboembolism or acute coronary syndrome, they are talking that the results actually more better with low molecular weight heparin as compared to the unfractionated heparin, and without any increased risk of bleeding. So that's one of the thing that they are talking about. I'm highlighting this thing, that this part they are talking about, that low molecular weight heparin is better than unfractionated because low risk of bleeding. And they are talking about many things about how they affect with different factors, how they interact. And another thing that is important they are talking about is the elimination of low molecular weight heparin, and slow elimination is mentioned here, and that's the benefit of this, because slow elimination would lead to sustained anticoagulation effect. And they're giving example of enoxaparin effective as anti-factor 10A concentration up to 10 hours. So because it's have slow elimination rate, so it can be having the duration or concentration up to 4 hours can be sustained. And they compare with other drugs like rabiparin and teniziparin that have faster decline as compared to enoxaparin. So this is very interesting article. You can read take a look of this article, and you can see more in detail the comparison between low molecular weight and unfractionated heparin. And when I read the conclusion, they're talking about the advantages of low molecular weight over unfractionated heparin, as we discussed in the previous, in regard to bioavailability and reproducible pharmacokinetic parameters. And obviously, because if the dose increases slightly or change of dose, it can lead to bleeding. So the main thing is that they are talking about major hemorrhagic events, and with renal failure, they are talking about that patients that are having renal failure having more chances to have the hemorrhagic events. And they are talking about that as compared that to unfractionated heparin, low molecular weight, so better result. But the mechanism of action is still unknown, that why this happened. Even this article published in 2005, and still I check online, the mechanism of action is still not known. So let's start with a case study. A 46-year-old man came to the emergency department by ambulance complaining of crushing chest pain with radiated down his left arm, and started hour ago while he was watching television. The patient wife called 911, and the paramedics gave him aspirin, sublingual nitroglycerin and oxygen en route to the hospital. Clinical laboratory parameters showed that the patient has non-segment elevation, ST segment elevation, myocardial infarction. Patient was started on a heparin infusion and intravenous eptifibrate, and was sent for cardiac catheterization. So that's the case study, and we are discussing about heparin in our today's topic. So when we discuss about the mechanism of action, it is activate the antithrombin 3, and they have a unique pentasaccharide sequence, as we discussed in our previous research article, that it is a 5 molecule, that's why I mentioned 5 units between pentasaccharide sequence, allowing it binding and catalyze antithrombin 3. And this complex inactivate factor 9, factor 10 and thrombin 2A. Then special requirement for inactivation of thrombin ejector bridge to which both thrombin and antithrombin 3 bind. So as we already discussed, if I show you that, if I show you in the previous such article that it acts as a bridge between thrombin and antithrombin 3. Let me show you the picture again. So this is a picture from the book Katzung, and they are talking about the difference between how they are making the bridge. And you can see this picture, the top side is antithrombin 3 in active form, and if you see that with unfractionated heparin, they are making the bridge actually the antithrombin 3 and then the thrombin and that bridge, and they activate the antithrombin 3 because previously it is not active. If we are not giving heparin, it is inactive form. But what happened that unfractionated heparin, they make a bridge with antithrombin 3 and thrombin, and antithrombin get activated. And obviously the function of antithrombin after activation, it obviously its function to eliminate or to work against the thrombin. If you see the difference between unfractionated heparin and low molecular heparin, the difference is that unfractionated heparin is binding the unit or bridge between antithrombin 3 and thrombin both, whereas in low molecular weight heparin, they are only making a bridge with antithrombin 3, not with the thrombin. So that's the main difference between both of them. And I will show you another picture that we already discussed before. Same, they are talking about the same thing. Let me share with you. Yeah, if we take a look of this picture again, you can see that there is a bridge between unfractionated heparin. They are forming the bridge between different factors, like you can say factor 10A and then the thrombin. So they are also showing you expressing the bridge between both of them. And if you see the look of the low molecular heparin, they are not making the bridge. So when we compare with unfractionated heparin and low molecular weight heparin, that high molecular weight heparin have high affinity for antithrombin, markedly inhibit blood coagulation by all three clotting factors, especially thrombin and factor 10A, whereas shorter low molecular heparin inhibit and activate factor 10A but has less effect on thrombin as compared to unfractionated heparin. Unfractionated heparin have molecular weight 5,000 to 30,000. It sometimes some books mention 6,000 to 30,000, so it varies. Low molecular weight heparin example like enoxaparin, dalteparin, teniziparin, but we already discussed that enoxaparin is having high, you can say that high life, especially 10 hours as we discussed before, and it is effective in several thromboembolic conditions like myocardial infarction. Lower molecular heparin in comparison with unfractionated heparin has equal efficiency, increased bioavailability as discussed before from subcutaneous injection, and less frequent dosing because of the longer duration of action. This is a pictures of different clotting factors, and you already studied in your previous lecture, so I'm skipping this slide. And the monitoring of heparin effect, we need to closely monitor the patient thromboplastin time, because if it prolong or it may lead to excessive bleeding as well. And how can we monitor? We can monitor with using protamine titration is the method to determine that. And how we measure the dose? We need to give them dose. We need to give them dose based upon the weight, body weight of the patient. The toxic effect include bleeding, especially in elderly women, and renal insufficiency. I already mentioned that are at high risk. Heparin of animal origin should be used cautionally in patient with allergy. It can cause alopecia, but it is reversible. Long-term therapy can lead to osteoporosis or hyperkalemia. And then also it is responsible for heparin-induced thrombocytopenia. That is one of the most important, and that's why I made a separate slide for that. For heparin-induced thrombocytopenia usually occur around 1 to 4%, and especially with unfractionated heparin for around minimum of 7 days. Patients that are under surgical, already done surgeries or numerous surgeries that have been undergone, that are having high risk, and the risk is higher if the patient given unfractionated heparin of bovine origin, as we already discussed that unfractionated heparin is not suitable for many patients because of it can increase the bleeding for renal failures or patients that already have multiple surgeries before. So if patient having heparin induced thrombocytopenia, then it will be treated with low molecular weight heparin. And when we talk about relationship between heparin induced thrombocytopenia, the main thing is that it could be occur because of the venous thrombosis or occlusion or blockage of peripheral or central arteries. This is another picture that I have found somewhere in one of the research articles, and they are talking about how we manage especially patient with the exposure of thrombocytopenia. So first we need to classify them into high, intermediate or low pre-test probability. That what is the probability, whether the patient having high probability or intermediate probability or low probability. And the high, intermediate or low probability could be possible because of multiple reasons. Maybe because patient already have some renal problem, or patient already have surgical issues before this thromboembolism or thrombosis. So we need to see the patient, especially when we talk about the clinical management, we need to classify the patient as high, intermediate or low. How can we identify? We can see using immunoassays, functional assays. If you see in the middle line, the central line, let me highlight. So you can see that immunoassays, functional assays, for all of them we use this. So the main thing is that if patient already having risk of thrombocytopenia before giving them the treatment, or for example during the treatment when exposure has been given, and if a patient having exposed to heparin and then leads to thrombocytopenia, still we need to see both aspects, because before giving the treatment or during the given treatment we both need to see that probability of thrombocytopenia. And how can we identify? We identify by the following methods that has been given. If patient having low, then we don't need to test, and usually patient don't having thrombocytopenia. Why? Because obviously patient have no surgeries, no kidney problem and healthy before, and that's why we continue the therapy. But we need to see the alternative if, for example, sudden bleeding occur or unknown etiology or idiopathic reasons. When we talk about intermediate, we need to see whether we need to discontinue or not, and we need to see the alternative. But we need to take the decision depending upon the patient condition. At high condition, obviously we need to discontinue heparin if we are giving, and then we need to see the alternative. So the main important thing is that we not only need to see the thrombocytopenia before giving the heparin, but we also need to see the treatment after giving them heparin, and we need to monitor patient condition, especially in that regard. If we see below the test we can give, they mention different tests like serotonin release assay or heparin induced aggregation test, HIPA, and they mention different tests that we can give to assess the patient conditions. So we mentioned patient falling point should be considered before giving any treatment, like platelets count, thrombocytopenia, any new thrombus form as a result of heparin, and if patient having HIT, the treatment must be discontinued. And then we can give administration of direct thrombin inhibitors or fondaparinux. So where this drug is contraindicated, this is a quite long list, like hypersensitivity because of the animal origin, active bleeding, hemophilia, significant thrombocytopenia, purpurea, severe hypertension as well because it could cause hemorrhage, intracranial hemorrhage as well, infectious endocarditis, active tuberculosis, ulcerative lesion of the GIT, threatened abortion, visceral carcinoma, advanced renal or hepatic failure. We already discussed few of them before, like the renal failure as well. Threatened abortion because obviously abortion as well cause bleeding. So if you take a look of the contraindications in generally, they are mostly related to either the hemorrhage or bleeding, blood loss, or infective endocarditis is another reason that why this happen, but the reason is still unknown. And these all there are number of reasons where the drugs, especially heparin, is contraindicated. And when we talk about its administration and dosage, usually I don't describe the dosage, but in this we need to know that we're talking about 0.2 to 0.4 ml unit per ml. How can we identify? We can use protamine titration is a method actually to determine the concentration of heparin. This is a chemical method. I'm not going to explain them. Then RV 0.3 to 0.7 unit per ml. It is also known as anti-XA units. It can be given as continuous intravenous administration by infusion pump, and after initial bolus injection of 80 to 100 unit per kilogram, a continuous infusion of 15 to 20 units per kg per hour will be required. So it means that initially we give them 80 units, and then the units we can give to 15 to 22 units per kg per hour. So the initial dose will be not on per hour base, but is on maybe on initial dose that is required to maintain the dosage, and initial will be 80 to 100 units per kg, but then after then per hour we need to give them 15 to 22 units per hour. So low dose for prophylaxis can be given subcutaneous 5000 units every 8 to 12 hours if patient having chances to make the thrombus formation, because obviously danger of hematoma formation at the site of injection as well. So that's why heparin never administered through intramuscular. So it can be given subcutaneous. Enoxaparin can be given subcutaneous 30 mg twice a day or 40 mg QD. Then prophylactic of dalteparin can be given 5000 units subcutaneous around QD. The therapeutic dosing is 200 units per kilogram. Or for QD for venous disease, it could be given as 120 units per kg. For 12 hours for acute coronary syndrome. Low molecular weight heparin should be used cautionally in patient with renal insufficiency or patient having body weight 150 kg greater than. So measurement of the anti-XA level is also important for proper guidance and the dose. So that's why for the treatment of heparin we need to see the dosage very carefully, because too much bleeding could be occur if the dose is inaccurate. So we need to measure them. The synthetic pentasaccharide molecule fondaparinux is also you given sometime if a patient need to give, and it bind with the antithrombin. And fondaparinux have a long half-life of 15 hours and once daily dose. That's why fondaparinux is preferable in many patients. It is used once daily as subcutaneous and treatment of venous thromboembolism. The use of fondaparinux is an alternative anticoagulant, and I already mentioned that it is currently being tested under clinical trials. This is a drug that has been given dalteparinux, come as commercial name as Fragmin. Then we have fondaparinux, come under the name Arithroxa. Then we have Clinexane. How can we reverse the effect of this drug, especially heparin? As I already mentioned that it is very important. Sometimes would happen that bleeding occur, and then we can give protamine for every 100 unit of heparin. 1 milligram of protamine sulfate is used as intravenous, and the rate should not exceed 50 milligram in 10 minutes. Excess protamine also avoided because it have an anticoagulant effect, so need to maintain the balance between heparin and protamine if in case the bleeding occur. But the problem is that if patient giving fondaparinux, protamine will not reverse the activity. So that's a disadvantage of fondaparinux. Although we can get benefit that we can give only one time dose, but that's the problem. So thank you so much for today's lecture. This is a quite long and lengthy lecture, and thank you so much.